The stranger rode into Sweetwater, Texas on a Tuesday morning in June of 1878, slumped so far forward in her saddle that folks thought she might be dead until her horse stopped at the livery stable, and she slid sideways off its back like a sack of grain, hitting the dirt hard enough to raise a small cloud of dust that hung in the already sweltering air. Abel Morrison was mucking out stalls when he heard the thud, and something in the sound made him drop his pitchfork and run. He found her lying there with one foot still caught in the stirrup, her dress torn and stained with travel, her dark hair matted with sweat and dust. Her horse, a gray mare that looked as exhausted as its rider, stood with its head hanging low. "Jesus," Abel muttered, kneeling beside her. He could see the rise and fall of her chest, shallow but steady. Her face was sunburned, lips cracked and bleeding. He worked her foot free of the stirrup and called out for help, but the stable was empty this time of morning. Most folks were still at breakfast or already at work in the fields. He slid his arms under her and lifted, surprised at how light she was, how fragile she felt despite the obvious strength it must have taken to ride however far she had ridden. He carried her into the stable office, a small room with a cot where he sometimes slept when he was too tired or too drunk to make it home. He laid her down gently and went to fetch water. When he returned with a ladle and bucket, her eyes were open. They were the color of whiskey in sunlight, brown with flecks of gold, and they were looking at him with a mixture of fear and defiance that made him stop in the doorway. "You are safe," he said quietly, the way he would talk to a spooked horse. "You are at the livery in Sweetwater. I am Abel Morrison. I work here." She tried to sit up and winced, falling back against the thin pillow. Her hand went to her side and he saw her wince again. "Do not move too fast," he said, coming closer with the water. "You took a hard fall, might have cracked a rib." "I need to keep moving," she said, her voice hoarse and cracking. "How long until the next town?" "Next town of any size is 2 days' ride east, 3 days west. But you are not riding anywhere today, maybe not tomorrow either. That mare of yours is about done in, and so are you." She closed her eyes and he saw her jaw clench. A tear escaped from the corner of her eye and tracked through the dust on her temple. "I cannot stay," she whispered. "He will find me." Abel felt something cold settle in his gut. He had seen enough in his 30 years to recognize a woman running from something, and he had learned the hard way that getting involved in other people's trouble was a good way to end up dead. But there was something about the way she looked, lying there so small and broken, that made him think of his sister Mary, dead these 5 years from fever, and before he could think better of it, he said, "Let him come. Nobody is going to hurt you here." Her eyes opened again, searching his face. "You do not know what you are saying. Maybe not. But I know you need rest and food and someone to look after that horse. I can give you all 3. The rest we can figure out later." She studied him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing her options, calculating odds. Finally, she nodded, just barely. "My name is Nora, Nora Emerson. Nice to meet you, Nora Emerson, though I wish it was under better circumstances." He held out the ladle. "Now drink this water before you dry up and blow away." She drank, and he could see how much effort it took for her not to gulp it down too fast. When she was finished, he went back for more and brought her some jerky from his saddlebag. It was not much, but it was what he had on hand. While she ate, he went to tend to her horse. The mare was in bad shape, ribs showing, hooves cracked, eyes dull with exhaustion. Abel led her to a stall and began the slow process of cooling her down, wiping her with a damp cloth, checking her legs for injury. He gave her just a little water at first, knowing too much too fast could kill her, then a small amount of grain. The horse ate mechanically, without enthusiasm, and that worried him more than anything. "You came a long way, girl," he murmured, running his hand down her neck. Whatever you were running from must have been bad. When he returned to the office, Nora was asleep, her breathing deeper now, more regular. He stood in the doorway watching her, trying to figure out what he had just gotten himself into. He was not a hero. He had never claimed to be. He was just a man who had made too many mistakes and ended up working at a livery stable in a nothing town in West Texas, trying to drink away memories that would not stay buried. But looking at her now, he felt something stir that he thought had died along with everything else. Not desire, not exactly, though she was pretty enough under the dust and sunburn. It was more like a sense of purpose, a feeling that maybe this was why he had ended up here instead of in one of the dozen graves he should have been in by now. He pulled an old blanket over her and went back to work. The town of Sweetwater in 1878 was small even by Texas standards, maybe 200 souls if you counted the ranches and homesteads within riding distance. It sat on the edge of the open range, where cattle country met the harder, drier land to the west. The railroad had not reached them yet, though there was talk it might come through in another year or two. For now, they had a main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, a doctor's office, the livery, and not much else. Abel had been there 3 years, ever since the thing in Oklahoma that he tried not to think about. He kept to himself mostly, did his work, drank just enough to take the edge off at night. People left him alone, which was how he liked it. He had been a different person once, with different dreams, but that person was gone and good riddance. Nora slept through the rest of the morning and into the afternoon. Around 2 o'clock, Abel brought her more water and some bread he had bought from the general store. She woke when he came in, startling badly enough that he almost dropped the plate. "Just me," he said. "Brought you something to eat." She sat up slowly, holding her side. In the better light from the window, he could see bruises on her arms, old ones fading yellow and new ones still purple. Her dress, now that he looked at it properly, was quality fabric, well made, the kind of thing a woman of means would wear, or had worn before whatever happened to put her on that horse. "Thank you," she said, taking the bread. "I should pay you. I have some money. Keep your money. Eat first, then we can talk about what comes next." She ate slowly, carefully, like someone who had not had regular meals in a while. When she was done, she looked at him directly. "I need to sell my horse and buy passage on the next stage east. When does it come through?" "Tuesdays and Fridays." "So you missed today's by a few hours, and the next one is 3 days away." He saw something flicker in her eyes, fear or frustration or both. 3 days, she repeated. 3 days, he confirmed. "And I am not sure you should sell that mare. She is a good horse, just needs rest and proper care. A horse like that, loyal enough to run herself near to death for you, that is worth keeping." "I cannot keep her. I cannot keep anything." She looked away, toward the small window that showed a slice of blue Texas sky. "You asked who I was running from. His name is Harold Brennan. He owns half of San Antonio. He also thinks he owns me." Abel pulled up the only chair in the room and sat down, giving her his full attention. "Husband? Not yet. Not ever, if I have anything to say about it." She wrapped her arms around herself, though the room was hot. "My father owed him money, a lot of money. When my father died last year, Harold said the debt transferred to me. He offered to forgive it if I would marry him. He made it sound like a kindness, like he was doing me a favor. But he was not. No." Her voice went quiet, hard. "He was buying me, same as he would buy cattle or land. And when I refused, he made it clear I did not really have a choice. So I ran." Abel let out a long breath. He knew men like Harold Brennan, had worked for men like that once upon a time. They thought money and power meant they could take whatever they wanted, and maybe they were right, because they usually did. Fighting men like that was a good way to end up dead or worse. "How long ago did you leave?" 5 days. Maybe 6. I lost track." She looked down at her hands, raw and blistered from the rains. "I thought I could make it to Louisiana. I have an aunt there, my mother's sister. She might take me in, help me start over. Louisiana is a long way from here. Too far to ride alone, especially with someone looking for you." "I know that now." There was bitterness in her voice and defeat. "I thought I was strong enough. I thought I could do it." "You made it this far," Abel said. "That takes strength." She looked at him, really looked at him, maybe for the first time. He wondered what she saw. He was not much to look at. He knew that. Tall and lean and weathered, with dark hair that needed cutting and a scar through his left eyebrow from a fight he barely remembered. His eyes were blue, which his mother had always said was his one good feature, but they were also hard, old beyond his years. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "You do not know me. You do not owe me anything." "No, I do not," he agreed. "But I figure if you went to the trouble of running this far, you must have good reason, and I do not much care for men who think they can buy people." She studied him a moment longer, then nodded slowly. "Thank you, for the water and the food and the kindness. I have not had much of any of those lately." "You can stay here until the stage comes," he said. "I will not charge you. The stable owner will not even notice. He only comes by once a week to collect money, and he was just here yesterday." "Where will you sleep?" "I have got a room above the saloon. I only use this cot when I am too drunk to climb stairs, and I will try to stay sober the next few days." That got almost a smile from her, just a tiny quirk at the corner of her mouth, and he was surprised by how much he wanted to see it again. The next 3 days fell into a rhythm that felt both strange and natural. Abel would come by in the morning with breakfast, check on Nora, then tend to the horses. She would rest, sleep, slowly regain her strength. In the afternoons, when the worst heat had passed, he would help her walk around the stable yard, building back her stamina. In the evenings, they would sit in the office and talk. She told him about growing up in San Antonio, about her father who had been a banker before bad investments ruined him, about her mother who had died when Nora was 12. She told him about Harold Brennan's cold eyes and colder hands, about the way he looked at her like she was a thing to be possessed. She told him about the night she packed a bag and stole her father's old mare from the stable and rode out into the darkness with nothing but fear driving her forward. In return, Abel found himself talking about things he had not spoken of in years. About growing up on a farm in Missouri, about his parents dead from cholera, about his sister Mary who had been everything good in his life until she was not anything at all. He told her about the war, though not which side he had fought on, and about the things he had done after that he was not proud of. He did not tell her about Oklahoma, about the bank robbery that went wrong, about the lawman who died. Some things were better left buried. "You are not what I expected," she said on the third evening as they sat watching the sun set through the open stable doors. "What did you expect?" "I do not know. Someone harder, maybe, crueler. You look like you could be cruel." "I can be," he admitted. "I have been. But I am trying not to be any more." Why? He thought about that for a long moment, watching the sky turn from orange to red to purple. "Because being cruel did not get me anything worth having, and because my sister would have hated what I became after she died. I figure maybe if I try to be better, that is worth something. Maybe not much, but something." She was quiet for a while, then said, "I think it is worth a lot." The next morning, the Friday the stage was due, Abel woke up early with a bad feeling in his gut. He went to the stable before the sun was fully up and found Nora already awake, dressed in a clean dress she must have had in her bag, her hair brushed and pulled back. She looked better, stronger, the color back in her face. She also looked terrified. "I keep thinking he is going to ride up before the stage comes," she said. "That I am going to hear horses and turn around and see him there." "The stage comes at noon," Abel said. "6 more hours. We can manage 6 hours." But he was wrong. At 10 o'clock, a man in a black suit walked into the stable. He was tall and broad, with silver hair and a face that might have been handsome if not for the meanness in his eyes. Behind him came 2 other men, younger, harder, wearing guns low on their hips in a way that said they knew how to use them. "I am looking for a woman," the man in the black suit said, his voice smooth as oil. "Nora Emerson. I have been told she was seen coming into town earlier this week." Abel was mucking out a stall and he kept working, not looking up. "Do not know anyone by that name." "No." The man walked closer, his boots loud on the stable floor. "That is interesting because her horse is in that stall right there. The gray mare, I would recognize her anywhere. I bought her for Nora's father 5 years ago." Abel straightened slowly, pitchfork still in his hands. "Maybe someone sold the horse." "Maybe." The man smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Or maybe you are lying to me, which would be very foolish." "My name is Harold Brennan, and I have come a long way to retrieve something that belongs to me." "She is not here," Abel said, keeping his voice level. "Nora was in the office, and he prayed she had the sense to stay quiet and out of sight. Then you will not mind if my associates and I look around." "I do mind. This is private property and you are not welcome." Harold Brennan's smile widened. "I admire your courage, friend, truly I do, but you are just a stable hand and I am a man of considerable means and influence. If I want to search this building, I will search it, and there is nothing you can do to stop me." "Maybe not," Abel said, "but I can make you think twice about it." One of the gunmen laughed. "You and what army, stable boy?" Abel considered his options. He had a gun in the office, a Colt Peacemaker he had taken off a dead man in Kansas, but it was in a drawer and he was out here. The pitchfork was not much of a weapon against 2 armed men, but it was what he had. He thought about Mary, about how he had not been there when she needed him, and he thought about Nora, hiding in the next room, and he made his choice. "Last chance," he said to Harold Brennan. "Get out of my stable." Brennan sighed like Abel was a child who refused to see reason. He nodded to his men. "Search the building. If she is here, bring her out. If he tries to stop you, shoot him." The gunmen moved forward, and Abel moved too. He swung the pitchfork hard, catching the first man in the shoulder before he could draw his gun. The man yelled and went down, and Abel spun to face the second one, but he was too slow. The second gunman had his pistol out and was bringing it up when a shot rang out, loud in the enclosed space of the stable. The gunman looked surprised, then fell forward onto his face. Behind him, in the doorway of the office, stood Nora with Abel's Colt in both hands, smoke rising from the barrel. "Leave," she said, and her voice was steady despite the way her hands were shaking. "Leave now and do not come back." Harold Brennan stared at her, his face gone red, veins standing out on his forehead. "You shot him. You actually shot him." "I did," she said. "And I will shoot you too if you do not get out of here." "You belong to me," Brennan snarled, his smooth voice gone, replaced by something ugly and raw. "Your father owed me $20,000. That debt does not go away just because you ran off like a spoiled child." "My father's debts died with him," Nora said. "I checked with a lawyer before I left. You lied to me. You used my ignorance against me." "But I am not ignorant anymore, and I am not your property." "You will regret this," Brennan said, but he was backing toward the door, helping his wounded associate up. "I will ruin you. I will make sure you never have a moment's peace." "I will. You will leave," Abel said, picking up the fallen gunman's pistol. "You will leave and you will not come back. Because if you do, I will kill you myself, and I promise you I have killed better men than you for worse reasons." For a moment they stood there in tableau, the living and the almost dead, the hunters and the hunted, and Abel could feel which way it was going to tip. Then Brennan dragged his man toward the door, leaving the dead one behind. "This is not over," Brennan said from the doorway. "Not by a long shot." Then he was gone, and Abel could hear horses riding away fast. He turned to Nora, who was still holding the gun, still shaking. He walked over slowly and gently took the Colt from her hands. "You did good," he said quietly. "You saved my life." She looked at the dead man on the floor, and all the color drained from her face. "I killed him." "You did what you had to do. He was going to kill me. You had no choice." "I had no choice," she repeated, but her voice was hollow, and Abel could see shock setting in. He led her back to the office and sat her down on the cot, then went to deal with the body. By the time the sheriff arrived, drawn by the sound of gunshots, Abel had the story straight in his head. The men had come in threatening violence, demanding money. One had drawn on him, and Nora had shot in defense of Abel's life. It was the truth, mostly, just with the parts about Harold Brennan left vague. The sheriff, a tired man named Garrett who had known Abel as long as Abel had been in Sweetwater, looked at the dead gunman and sighed. "This is going to be a mess of paperwork," he said. "But from what you are telling me, it was a clean shoot, self-defense. The lady will need to give a statement." Nora gave her statement, her voice quiet but clear, and Sheriff Garrett wrote it all down. He asked about Harold Brennan, and Abel could see him putting pieces together, understanding more than what was being said. "This man Brennan," Garrett said slowly. "He is the one you were running from." "Yes," Nora said. "And now you have killed one of his men." "Yes." Garrett rubbed his face with both hands. "You understand he will not let this go. Man with that kind of money, that kind of pride, he will come back with more men. Legal or not legal, right or wrong, he will come back." "I know," Nora said. "That is why I need to leave." "The stage already came and went while I was here taking statements," Garrett said. "Next one is Tuesday." Nora closed her eyes, and Abel saw her shoulders slump. 4 more days. 4 more days for Harold Brennan to gather his forces and return. "She can stay at the jail," Garrett offered. "I can protect her there." "No," Nora said, opening her eyes. "No more running, no more hiding. I am tired of being afraid." "Then what do you want to do?" Abel asked. She looked at him, and he saw something new in her eyes, something fierce and determined. "I want to learn to protect myself. I want to learn to ride properly, to shoot properly, to fight if I need to. I want to stop being helpless." "That takes time," Abel said. "More than 4 days. Then I will stay longer than 4 days." She stood up, wincing only a little at her healing ribs. "I will stay as long as it takes. If Harold Brennan wants me, he will have to go through me. And I am going to make sure that is not as easy as he thinks." Abel looked at Sheriff Garrett, who shrugged. "It is her choice," Garrett said. "Though for what it is worth, I think she is crazy, but brave crazy, which is the best kind." After Garrett left, taking the body with him, Abel and Nora stood in the stable yard in the fading afternoon light. She looked exhausted, wrung out, but also strangely alive, like shooting that man had woken something up inside her. "You are serious about this?" Abel said. "About staying, about learning. I am serious," she confirmed. "Unless you want me to leave. This is your place, your life. I have already brought you enough trouble." "Trouble found me a long time ago," Abel said. "I am used to it. And if you are asking whether I am willing to teach you, the answer is yes. But you need to understand what you are asking for. Learning to shoot, to ride, to fight, it is not easy. You are going to hurt, going to fail, going to want to quit. And even if you learn it all, there is no guarantee it will be enough if Brennan comes back with a dozen men." "I know," she said. "But at least I will have tried. At least I will have done something other than run and hide and hope someone else saves me." She looked at him directly, and he saw tears in her eyes that refused to fall. "I killed a man today, Abel. I took a life. I cannot go back to being the woman who left San Antonio 5 days ago. That woman is gone. I need to figure out who I am now. He understood that, maybe better than she knew. He had been trying to figure out the same thing for years. All right, he said. We start tomorrow morning, early, before the heat sets in. I hope you are ready to work because I am not going to take it easy on you. Good, she said. I do not want easy, I want real. That night, Abel could not sleep. He lay on his narrow bed above the saloon, listening to the piano music and laughter from below, thinking about the dead man and Harold Brennan and Nora Emerson with her whiskey-colored eyes and her newfound determination. He thought about how much trouble he was in, how much trouble they were both in, and how it was probably going to get worse before it got better. But he also thought about how, for the first time in 3 years, he felt like he had a reason to get up in the morning beyond just existing. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he could do something that mattered. He could help this woman become strong enough to stand on her own. He could give her the tools she needed to fight back against men like Harold Brennan. And maybe, in doing that, he could find a way to forgive himself for all the times he had failed before. The next morning he was at the stable before dawn. Nora was already there, wearing a split riding skirt she must have bought or borrowed, her hair braided back, her face set with determination. I thought you might change your mind, she said when she saw him. I thought you might, he countered. She smiled, and this time it was a real smile, not just a quirk of the mouth. Not a chance. They started with the basics. Abel brought out her mare, now rested and fed and looking much better, and showed Nora the proper way to saddle her. She had been riding, obviously, but she had been doing it wrong, fighting the horse instead of working with her. He showed her how to check the cinch, how to adjust the stirrups, how to mount smoothly without spooking the animal. A horse can feel everything you feel, he explained, his hand on the mare's neck. If you are afraid, she is afraid. If you are tense, she is tense. You need to learn to be calm, even when you are not feeling calm, especially when you are not feeling calm. That is the first lesson. Be calm, Nora repeated. Even when someone is shooting at me. Especially then, Abel said. Panic gets you killed. Staying calm gives you options. They worked through the morning, Abel teaching and Nora learning with a focus that impressed him. She did not complain when she fell, did not make excuses when she got it wrong. She just got back up and tried again. By noon, she was riding circles around the stable yard, her posture better, her hands lighter on the reins. You are a natural, he said and meant it. I have a good teacher, she replied, flushed with exertion and pleasure. In the afternoon, they worked on shooting. Abel set up targets in a clear area behind the stable and taught her how to hold the colt properly, how to aim, how to breathe and squeeze the trigger instead of pulling. The gun was heavy in her hands and the first few shots went wide, but she kept at it, adjusting her stance, correcting her grip, until she finally hit the target dead center. Yes, she shouted, then laughed at her own enthusiasm. I did it. You did, Abel agreed, and he could not help but smile at her joy. Now do it again. They fell into a routine over the next several days. Mornings were for riding, afternoons for shooting, evenings for talking. Abel taught her how to move quietly, how to watch for danger, how to read tracks and signs. He taught her how to throw a punch, how to use her size and speed as advantages instead of limitations. He taught her everything he knew about survival, about fighting, about not giving up when everything said you should. And in teaching her, he found himself learning too. He learned that she had a quick mind and a dry sense of humor that could catch him off guard. He learned that she sang to herself when she thought no one was listening, old songs her mother had taught her. He learned that she was brave in ways he had not been at her age, willing to face her fears head-on instead of running from them. He also learned that he was falling in love with her, which was the most surprising and terrifying thing of all. It happened gradually, then all at once. It was in the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating, the way she laughed when she finally mastered something difficult, the way she looked at him sometimes like he was something more than just a washed-up cowboy with too many regrets. It was in the quiet moments at the end of the day when they sat together and did not need to fill the silence with words. He tried to ignore it, told himself he was too old for her, too damaged, too much of a lost cause. She was 22 and he was 30, which was not a huge gap in years but felt like a lifetime in experience. She deserved someone better, someone who had not done the things he had done, someone who could give her a real future instead of just survival. But the heart does not listen to logic, and his heart had apparently decided that Nora Emerson was worth the risk. 2 weeks after she had first ridden into town, on a Tuesday morning that dawned clear and hot, Nora hit 10 targets in a row without missing. She whooped with triumph, spinning to face Abel with the gun still smoking in her hand. "Did you see that? Did you see?" "I saw," he said, grinning despite himself. "You are getting good at this." "I have a good teacher," she said again, but this time there was something different in her voice, something that made him look at her more closely. She was looking back at him with an expression he could not quite read, her eyes soft and her smile gentle. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," she said. "Just, thank you for all of this, for everything. You did not have to help me, but you did. You have given me more in these 2 weeks than anyone has given me in years." "You did the work," he said, uncomfortable with the gratitude, with the weight of her gaze. "I just pointed you in the right direction." "No," she said, walking closer. "You did more than that. You gave me hope, Abel. You made me believe I could be strong enough to face whatever comes. That is not a small thing." He did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They stood there in the hot Texas sun, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her eyes, and he thought about how easy it would be to close the distance between them, to kiss her the way he had been wanting to kiss her for days now. But he did not. Because she had been through enough, and she did not need him complicating things with feelings she might not share. "We should get back," he said, stepping away. "It is too hot to be out here much longer." If she was disappointed, she did not show it. She just nodded and followed him back to the stable. That evening, as they sat in the office sharing a dinner of bread and cheese and apples, Nora said, "I have been thinking about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Brennan. He has not come back, but that does not mean he is gone. He is out there somewhere, planning, waiting, maybe gathering more men, maybe trying to find a legal way to force me back. I cannot stay in this stable forever." "Where would you go?" "I do not know." She looked down at her hands. "Louisiana, maybe, like I originally planned. Or somewhere else, somewhere far enough away that he cannot find me." "Running again," Abel said, and heard the disappointment in his own voice. "What else can I do? I cannot fight him forever. He has too much money, too much power. Eventually he will win." "Not if you stand your ground," Abel said. "Not if you make it too expensive, too hard, too much trouble for him to keep coming after you." "And how do I do that?" "By not being alone," he said. "By having people around you who will stand with you, who will make him think twice about trying anything. By building a life here that is worth fighting for." She looked at him, and he saw hope and fear warring in her expression. "Here, in Sweetwater. Why not? It is as good a place as any. Better than most. People here are decent mostly. They mind their own business, and you have already proven you can handle yourself." "I have also killed a man here," she pointed out. "That is not exactly a good start to building a life. It was self-defense. People understand that. And Sheriff Garrett made sure word got around about what really happened. You are not going to be run out of town for protecting yourself." "Maybe not," she said. But staying here means staying near you, and I have already put you in enough danger. Let me worry about that, Abel said. The question is, what do you want? Not what you think you should do, not what is safest or easiest, but what do you actually want? She was quiet for a long time, and he could see her thinking, weighing, deciding. Finally, she said, I want to stay. I want to stop running. I want to build something real, something that is mine and no one else's, and I want. She trailed off, looking at him with those whiskey eyes, and he felt his heart start to beat faster. What? He asked quietly. I want to understand why you have been avoiding me for the past 3 days. Every time I get close, you pull away. Every time I think we are having a moment, you find an excuse to leave. Why? He should have known she would notice. She was too smart, too observant to miss the way he had been keeping distance between them. Because it is not appropriate, he said finally. You came here running from a man who wanted to own you. The last thing you need is another man wanting something from you. But you do want something from me, she said. I can see it in the way you look at me when you think I am not paying attention. I can feel it in the way you touch my hand when you are correcting my shooting stance. So why not just say it? Because you have been through hell, he said, feeling cornered. Because you are vulnerable. Because if I said what I wanted to say, you might feel obligated to reciprocate just because I helped you, and that would not be real. It would not mean anything. She stood up, and he stood too, instinctively. She crossed the small space between them until she was close enough that he could smell the sun in her hair. Abel Morrison, she said, you are many things, but you are not stupid, so stop acting like I do not know my own mind. I know what I feel. I know what I want, and what I want is you. Nora, let me finish, she said. You are right that I have been through hell. You are right that I am still figuring out who I am after everything that happened, but I am not some fragile thing that needs to be protected from her own feelings. I am a grown woman who just spent 2 weeks learning how to shoot and ride and fight, and I think I have earned the right to decide who I kiss. You want to kiss me, he said, and it was not quite a question. I want to kiss you, she confirmed. I have wanted to kiss you since about day 3, when you made me laugh about falling off my horse for the 10th time. I have wanted to kiss you every evening when we sit here and talk about nothing and everything. I have wanted to kiss you every time you look at me like I am something precious and rare. So unless you are going to tell me you do not feel the same way, I suggest you stop talking and let me kiss you. He could have argued. He could have come up with a dozen more reasons why this was a bad idea. But she was standing there looking at him with such certainty, such clarity, that he realized his reasons did not matter. What mattered was that she knew what she wanted, and what she wanted was him. I am too old for you, he tried one more time. You are 30, she said. I am 22. That is not too old, that is just right. I have done things I am not proud of, so have I. I shot a man, remember? I am a mess, he said, but he was already reaching for her. Then we can be a mess together, she said, and then she kissed him. It was not a perfect kiss, not like in stories. It was awkward at first, hesitant, both of them out of practice or maybe just nervous. But then she sighed against his mouth and he pulled her closer, and it became something else, something deeper and truer than any kiss he had ever had before. It was hope and fear and need all tangled together, and when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he knew that everything had changed. Well, she said, her voice a little shaky, that was worth waiting for. Yeah, he agreed, still holding her, afraid to let go. It was. They stood there in the small office, wrapped around each other, and Abel felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he deserved this, deserved her, deserved a chance at something good. But the world has a way of interrupting happy moments, and this one was no exception. From outside came the sound of horses, a lot of them, riding hard. Abel pulled away from Nora and grabbed his gun from the desk drawer. "Stay here," he said, but she was already picking up her own gun, checking the chamber. "Not a chance," she said. "We do this together." They went to the door and looked out. In the street, lit by the rising moon, were a dozen riders. At the front, on a black stallion, sat Harold Brennan. "Nora Emerson," he called out, his voice carrying in the still air. "I know you are in there. Come out and face justice for the murder of my man." "Justice," Nora muttered. "He would not know justice if it bit him." "We can hold them off," Abel said quietly. "The stable is good cover, and they will not want to risk a gunfight in the middle of town. Too many witnesses." "Or we can end this," Nora said. She stepped out into the street before Abel could stop her, her gun held loosely at her side. "I am here, Harold," she said. "What do you want?" "I want you to answer for your crimes," Brennan said. "You killed a man in cold blood. You need to stand trial. It was self-defense, and you know it. Your men came here to hurt me. I protected myself." "That is for a court to decide." "A court you will buy," Nora said. "A court you will control." "No, thank you. I will take my chances here." Abel moved up beside her, his own gun drawn. Around them he could see lights coming on in windows, doors opening. People were coming out to see what the commotion was, and he felt a small measure of relief. Brennan was right about one thing. There were too many witnesses for this to get too ugly. "This is between me and Nora," Brennan said to Abel. "You should step aside." "Not going to happen," Abel said. "Then you are as guilty as she is." "For what?" "Protecting a woman from a man who thinks he can buy anything he wants." "Yeah, I am guilty of that. Proud of it too." Brennan's face darkened. "You have no idea who you are dealing with." "Sure I do," Abel said. "You are a bully with money who is used to getting his way." "But you are not getting your way this time. Nora does not belong to you. She never did. Her father's debts are not her debts, and even if they were, you cannot force her to marry you to pay them off. That is not how the law works." "The law is whatever I say it is," Brennan snarled. "Not here," said a new voice. Sheriff Garrett stepped out of the shadows, his own gun drawn. "Not in my town." Behind him came others. The owner of the general store, the blacksmith, the doctor, even the preacher, unarmed but standing firm. One by one, the people of Sweetwater came out and stood in the street, a human barrier between Brennan and Nora. "You want to take her, you will have to go through all of us," Garrett said. "And I do not think you want that kind of trouble." Brennan looked around at the assembled townsfolk, and Abel could see him calculating odds, weighing options. Finally, he spat on the ground and yanked his horse around. "This is not over," he said, but it sounded hollow now, like a threat he knew he could not back up. "Yeah, it is," Nora said. "Go home, Harold. Find someone else to torment. I am done being afraid of you." For a moment, Abel thought Brennan might do something stupid, might pull his gun or charge or something. But then he wheeled his horse and rode off into the darkness, his men following. They watched until the sound of hoofbeats faded, until the night was quiet again. Then Sheriff Garrett turned to Nora and said, "You have got some nerve. I will give you that." "I learned from the best," she said, looking at Abel. The crowd started to disperse, people going back to their homes and their interrupted evenings. But before they left, several of them stopped to speak to Nora, to welcome her properly to Sweetwater, to make it clear that she was one of them now. Abel watched and felt something warm spread through his chest. This was what community meant. This was what it looked like when people stood up for what was right. When everyone had gone, Abel and Nora went back into the stable. She was shaking, the adrenaline wearing off, and he held her while she cried tears of relief and exhaustion and release. "It is over," he said into her hair. "You are safe now." "We are safe," she corrected. "You stood with me. Everyone did. I have never had that before." "You have it now," he promised, "for as long as you want it. She pulled back to look at him. "What if I want it forever?" "Then forever it is," he said, and kissed her again. The next few weeks were a blur of work and planning and building toward a future neither of them had thought possible a month ago. Nora took a job at the general store, helping with inventory and customers. She was good with people, good with numbers, and within a week, she had reorganized the whole place and increased sales by making sure popular items were always in stock. Abel continued working at the livery, but he also started taking on other work, breaking horses for local ranchers, doing odd jobs, saving money. Because he had a plan now, a goal beyond just getting through the day. He wanted to buy land. Not much, just enough for a small ranch, a few head of cattle, maybe some horses. Enough to build a life with Nora if she would have him. They courted properly, or as properly as two people who had already kissed could court. He took her to church on Sundays, sat with her at town socials, walked her home in the evenings. He met with the preacher and asked what it would take to be considered a respectable suitor. He even stopped drinking, which was harder than he expected but worth it when he saw the pride in her eyes. And Nora bloomed. That was the only word for it. Free from fear, free from the weight of Harold Brennan's pursuit, she became more fully herself. She joined the church choir and sang in a clear, sweet soprano. She helped organize a school for the town's children. She learned to bake and brought treats to the stable for Abel. She was happy, and her happiness made him happy in ways he had forgotten were possible. 3 months after she had ridden into town more dead than alive, Abel asked her to marry him. He did it at sunset, in the stable yard where he had first taught her to ride, with her mare standing nearby as witness. He did not have a ring yet, but he had words he had been practicing, words that came from the deepest part of him. "Nora Emerson," he said, taking her hands in his. "You rode into my life when I had given up on just about everything. You were broken and scared and running, and somehow you found the strength not just to survive, but to become someone stronger than you ever were before. You taught me that it is never too late to change, never too late to be better, never too late to hope. I love you. I love your courage and your stubborn determination and the way you sing when you think nobody is listening. I love the way you look at me like I am something more than my past. And I would be honored, more honored than I can say, if you would agree to be my wife." She was crying, but she was smiling too, a smile so bright it could have lit the whole desert. "Yes," she said. "Yes, yes, yes. I would love to marry you, Abel Morrison." He kissed her then in the fading light, and it felt like coming home. They were married in November, in the small church in Sweetwater, with half the town in attendance. Sheriff Garrett stood up with Abel, and the owner of the general store stood with Nora. The preacher kept the ceremony short because everyone knew there was a dance and food afterward, and people in West Texas did not like to waste time when there was celebrating to do. Nora wore a dress made by the seamstress in town, simple but beautiful, white with blue trim. Abel wore his best shirt and a new vest he had bought special for the occasion. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Abel kissed her with such tenderness that several of the older women in the crowd cried. They danced until midnight, slow waltzes and fast reels, and Abel, who had never thought of himself as much of a dancer, found that he did not mind it at all when he was dancing with her. She fit perfectly in his arms, her head tucked under his chin, and he thought about how improbable this all was, how lucky he was to have found her, or for her to have found him. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, looking up at him. "About how a few months ago I was just a man mucking out stalls with no future and no hope, and now I am married to the most incredible woman I have ever met. It does not seem real." "It is real," she assured him. "As real as anything has ever been. You taught me to ride, Abel." You taught me to be strong, to stand up for myself, to not be afraid. But more than that, you taught me to hope. You showed me that even when everything seems lost, there is still a chance for something good, for something real. You taught me the same thing, he said. Maybe we taught each other. Maybe we did, she agreed. And maybe that is what love is. Not just finding someone who completes you, but finding someone who helps you become who you were always meant to be. When did you get so wise? He asked, teasing. I married you, did I not? That shows excellent judgment. He laughed and spun her around, and she laughed too, and the sound of their joy echoed through the night. They spent their first night as husband and wife in a room above the general store that had been fixed up special for them. It was small but clean, with a real bed and curtains on the window and a view of the street below. Abel carried her over the threshold the way tradition demanded, and she pretended to be scandalized even as she kissed him. What happened next was private, sacred, just between the two of them. But afterward, lying in the darkness with her head on his chest and his arm around her shoulders, Abel thought about how far they had both come. From brokenness to wholeness, from despair to hope, from loneliness to love. Thank you, he whispered into her hair. For what? She murmured, half asleep, for choosing me, for believing in me, for making me want to be better. Thank you for the same things, she said. Now go to sleep, husband, we have a lot of work ahead of us. Work, building a life, she said, building a home, building a future. It is going to take everything we have. Then it is a good thing we have each other, he said. Yes, she agreed, and then she was asleep, her breathing deep and even. Abel lay awake a while longer, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight and warmth of her against him. He thought about Harold Brennan, wondered if he would ever try again to cause trouble. But even if he did, Abel was not afraid, because he was not alone anymore. He had Nora and she had him, and together they could face anything. Eventually, he slept too, and his dreams were peaceful for the first time in years. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. Abel bought the land he had been saving for, 20 acres just outside Sweetwater with a creek running through it and good grass for cattle. He built a house with his own hands, with help from the men in town, a sturdy building of wood and stone that would stand for generations. Nora helped with everything. She worked beside him digging post holes, hauling lumber, hammering nails until her hands blistered. She had learned to work hard during those weeks of training, and she never complained, never faltered. Together, they built not just a house but a home. They started with 10 head of cattle, bought cheap from a rancher who was moving north. Then they added chickens and a few pigs. Nora planted a garden that grew vegetables they could eat and sell. Abel broke horses for other ranchers and earned a reputation as a man who was good with difficult animals, patient and firm and fair. Money was tight those first few years, but they managed. They had each other and they had hope, and that turned out to be enough. In the spring of 1880, Nora told Abel she was pregnant. He had been mending fence when she came out to find him, and the look on her face told him it was important before she even spoke. I am going to have a baby, she said, and her voice was full of wonder and fear and joy all mixed together. Abel dropped the hammer he was holding and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. We are going to have a baby, he corrected. We are going to be parents. Are you happy? She asked, and he heard the uncertainty in her voice. Happy? Nora, I am terrified and thrilled and amazed all at once. But yes, I am happy. So happy I could burst with it. She laughed and cried at the same time, and he held her and thought about how much his life had changed. How much he had changed. The man he had been before she came would not have known what to do with this kind of happiness. But the man he was now, the man she had helped him become, knew exactly what to do. He would love her and protect her and their child. He would build them a life worth living. He would be better than his past, better than his mistakes, better than he ever thought he could be. Their son was born in December, on a cold night when the wind howled and the stars were bright and hard overhead. The doctor came from town, and Nora labored for hours while Abel paced and prayed and felt utterly helpless. But then there was a cry, thin and reedy, and the doctor was smiling and saying, "You have a boy." They named him Samuel after Abel's father, and from the moment Abel held him, wrapped in a blanket Nora had made, he felt a kind of love he had not known existed. It was fierce and protective and overwhelming, and he understood for the first time what people meant when they said they would die for their children. Nora recovered slowly from the birth, and Abel took over everything he could, cooking and cleaning and caring for Samuel when she needed rest. He learned to change diapers and soothe crying and walk the floor at 3 in the morning when the baby would not sleep. He learned that being a father was the hardest and best thing he had ever done. As Samuel grew, Abel taught him the things his own father had taught him: how to ride a horse, how to work with his hands, how to be honest and fair and kind. Nora taught him to read and write, to do sums, to think before he acted. Together, they raised a boy who was strong and smart and good-hearted. 2 years later, their daughter was born, a little girl with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. They named her Mary, after Abel's sister, and she grew up wild and free on the ranch, riding before she could properly walk, climbing trees and chasing chickens and bringing home every stray animal she found. Life was full and busy, and sometimes chaotic. There were droughts and floods, sick cattle and broken equipment, all the challenges that came with ranching. But there were also good years. Years when the rain came at the right time and the cattle were healthy and they made enough money to add more land, to improve the house, to think about the future. And through it all, Abel and Nora loved each other with a steady, deep love that only grew stronger with time. They still rode together in the evenings after the children were in bed, just the two of them under the vast Texas sky. They still talked about everything and nothing. They still kissed in the stable when they thought no one was looking. "We built something real," Nora said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. Samuel was practicing his roping in the yard, and Mary was singing to her doll in the swing Abel had hung from the big oak tree. "We did," Abel agreed, taking her hand. "Better than real. We built something that will last." "I never thought I would have this," she said quietly. "When I left San Antonio, I thought the best I could hope for was survival, maybe a quiet life somewhere, alone but free. I never imagined I would have all this. A home, a family, you." "I never imagined it either," Abel admitted. "I thought I was done with good things. I thought all I deserved was to exist, not to live. But then you rode into town half dead and you changed everything." "You changed everything," she corrected. "You could have turned me away, you could have let Brennan take me, but you stood up for me, fought for me, taught me to fight for myself. You gave me hope when I had none left." "We gave each other hope," he said, "and we turned it into this. Into something worth fighting for, worth believing in, worth loving." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play. In the distance, cattle lowed and somewhere a coyote called. The sky turned from orange to pink to purple and the first stars began to appear. "You ever think about him?" Nora asked eventually. "About Brennan?" "Sometimes," Abel admitted. "I wonder if he ever tried again, if he found someone else to torment. But mostly I do not think about him at all. He does not matter anymore. He was just an obstacle we overcame. The story is not about him. It is about us." "About a cowboy who taught a scared girl to ride," Nora said softly. "And about a brave woman who taught a broken man to hope," Abel added. And about how together we found something real, she finished. Something that will outlast both of us. Something that will outlast all of us, he agreed, looking at their children. We are not just building a life, Nora, we are building a legacy. I like the sound of that, she said. A legacy of hope and love and not giving up. The best kind of legacy, he said, and kissed the top of her head. As the years passed, the ranch prospered. Samuel grew into a fine young man, tall and strong like his father, kind and thoughtful like his mother. He took over more and more of the ranch work, and Abel was proud to see him become someone the community respected. Mary grew into a spirited young woman who refused to be boxed in by anyone's expectations. She was as good with horses as her father, better even, and she had dreams of breeding and training animals that Abel encouraged with everything he had. Abel and Nora grew older together, their hair going gray, their faces gaining lines from years of sun and laughter and occasional worry. But they never stopped being partners, never stopped being friends, never stopped loving each other with the kind of depth that only comes from weathering storms together and coming out stronger on the other side. On their 20th anniversary, Abel took Nora back to the stable where they had first met. It was still there, though someone else ran it now. He had arranged with the current owner to borrow the space for an evening, and he set up a picnic dinner in the yard where he had first taught her to ride. 20 years, he said, pouring her a glass of wine. 20 years since you came crashing into my life. 20 years since you saved mine, she countered. I think we saved each other, he said. I think we have been saving each other every day since. I think you are right, she agreed. She looked around at the stable, at the setting sun, at him. Do you remember what you said to me that first day, when I asked why you were helping me? I said I did not much care for men who think they can buy people, Abel recalled. You also said, let him come. Like you were ready to face down the devil himself for a complete stranger. I should have known right then that I was going to fall in love with you. When did you know? He asked. For sure, I mean. When you taught me to shoot, she said without hesitation. When you handed me that gun and trusted me with it, trusted me to use it responsibly, trusted me to protect myself. You treated me like I was capable when I did not even feel capable. That was when I knew you were different from any man I had ever met. That was when I started to fall. I fell the first time you smiled, Abel admitted. Really smiled, not just that brave face you put on for the world. It was like seeing the sun come out, and I knew I was in trouble. Good trouble, she said. The best trouble, he agreed. They ate their dinner and talked about their children, about the ranch, about the future. They talked about the grandchildren they hoped to have someday, about growing old together on the land they had built with their own hands. They talked about everything and nothing the way they always had, the way they always would. As the stars came out overhead, Abel pulled Nora to her feet and held her close, swaying to music only they could hear. I love you, he said. I loved you when you were a scared girl who did not know how to ride. I loved you when you were a fierce woman learning to protect herself. I love you now, as my wife and the mother of my children and my partner in everything. I will love you until the day I die and beyond, if there is anything beyond. I love you too, she said, tears in her eyes. You taught me to ride, Abel. You taught me to hope. You taught me that love is not about possession or control, but about partnership and respect and choosing each other every single day. You made me believe in myself when no one else did. You made me believe in us. I will always believe in us, he promised. Always. They danced in the stable yard until the moon rose high and the night grew cool. Then they went home, to the house they had built, to the life they had made, to the love they had chosen and nurtured and protected through 20 years of joys and sorrows. And they knew, both of them, that this was what real love looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but true and lasting and worth everything. The years continued to roll by, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Samuel married a good woman from a neighboring ranch, and they had children of their own, 2 boys and a girl who learned to ride almost before they could walk. Mary surprised everyone by marrying a school teacher from back east who had come to Sweetwater looking for adventure and found love instead. They stayed in town and opened a proper school, and Mary trained horses on the side. Abel and Nora became grandparents, then great-grandparents. They watched their family grow and spread, roots going deep into the Texas soil, branches reaching toward the future. The ranch that had started as 20 acres and 10 head of cattle grew to hundreds of acres and a thriving herd. The Morrison name became respected throughout the region, known for fair dealing and quality livestock. But more than that, it became known as a family that stood by each other, that helped neighbors in need, that remembered where they came from and never forgot the value of hope and hard work and love. As Abel approached his 60th year, his body started to slow down. His hands ached in the morning, his back was not what it used to be, and he needed spectacles to read. But his mind was sharp and his heart was full, and he counted himself blessed beyond measure. Nora aged gracefully beside him, her hair going silver, her face lined but still beautiful to him. She moved a little slower, tired a little easier, but she never stopped being the fierce, determined woman he had fallen in love with. She still sang in the church choir. She still helped organize community events. She still brought him coffee in the morning and kissed him good night every evening. One autumn day in 1898, as they sat on the porch watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard, Nora said, "We have lived a good life, Abel Morrison." "The best life," he agreed. "Better than I ever deserved." "Better than either of us deserved," she said, "but we built it anyway. We took our broken pieces and made something whole, something real," he said, echoing the words they had spoken so many years ago. "Something real," she confirmed. "Something that will last long after we are gone. Do you have any regrets?" He asked, knowing the answer but wanting to hear her say it. "Not a single one," she said firmly. "Every choice I made, every risk I took, every moment of fear and doubt and struggle, it all led me here. To you, to this, how could I regret any of it? I feel the same way," he said. "Even the bad parts, the painful parts, they were all necessary. They made us who we are. They made us strong enough to choose love," she said. "Because that is what we did, Abel. Every single day we chose each other. We chose hope. We chose to believe that things could be better, and then we worked to make them better. That is the real story. Not that you saved me or I saved you, but that we saved each other by choosing love every single day. I will choose you every day for the rest of my life," he promised. The same promise he had made 20 years ago, 30 years ago, every anniversary and birthday and ordinary Tuesday in between. "And I will choose you," she said, taking his hand. They sat together as the sun set, as they had done thousands of times before, watching the sky turn colors that had no names. Around them, their family laughed and played, their legacy living and breathing and growing. And they knew, both of them, that whatever time they had left, whether it was years or days or hours, they would spend it together, because that was what love was. Not a feeling that came and went, but a choice made over and over again. A commitment to stand together through whatever came. A promise to keep hoping, keep fighting, keep believing in each other and in the future they had built together. The cowboy had taught her to ride, all those years ago in the dusty stable yard of Sweetwater, Texas. She had taught him to hope, to believe that he deserved more than just survival. And together they had found something real, something that transcended their individual broken pieces and became something whole and beautiful and lasting. They had found love. true love, the kind that endures. And as the last light faded from the sky and the first stars appeared overhead, Abel Morrison held his wife's hand and thought about how lucky he was, how blessed, how grateful for every moment, every memory, every choice that had led him to this place. "Thank you," he whispered to her, to the universe, to whatever higher power had seen fit to bring them together. "Thank you," she whispered back. And in that moment, sitting on the porch of the home they had built with their own hands, surrounded by the family they had created, they were exactly where they were meant to be, together, forever, real. The night deepened around them, and somewhere in the house behind them, a baby cried and was quickly soothed. A horse whinnied in the barn. A dog barked once, then fell silent. The sounds of home, of family, of a life well lived. Abel and Nora sat on the porch until the moon rose high, and the children had all been put to bed, and the house was quiet. Then they went inside, hand in hand, to the bedroom they had shared for decades, and they lay down together as they always did, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders. "I love you," he said, as he had said every night for 40 years. "I love you too," she replied, as she had replied every night for 40 years. And then they slept, peacefully and deeply, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys, but that they would face them together as they had faced everything. Because they were partners. They were friends. They were lovers. They were two broken people who had found each other at exactly the right moment and had chosen to build something beautiful from their brokenness. They had chosen hope. They had chosen love. They had chosen each other. And that choice had made all the difference. The end.